Picture a world where Yahweh is a nobody. He doesn't even exist in ancient Israel. Not yet. Yes, that's right. Yahweh and El are not the same gods. They are two different deities with two completely different stories. That is, until they merge into one god later. The gods ruling the land are El, the wise creator, his consort Asherah, and the storm-wielding Baal. So how does this upstart god Yahweh show up out of nowhere and end up on the throne? Buckle up, because this mystery runs deep. First, we glide past the Dead Sea into the rugged hills of Judea. Yahweh has some roots here, but guess what? He's not the only god in town. There's another deity hiding in the background, one with a shocking connection to Yahweh that could flip everything you thought you knew. From there, we travel to Edom, the realm of Kos. Some scholars whisper that Kos and Yahweh might just be one and the same. And in the copper smelting region of Timnah, under the blazing sun, Yahweh could have emerged like a god forged in fire, flames, molten metal, and all the drama of a divine blacksmith. But this fiery birth is just the start. We head east to Midian, where Moses fled after his big Exodus fiasco, marrying into a family of Yahweh worshippers. The Midianites hold a key piece of Yahweh's story, one that's going to make you rethink everything about this god's past. We trek across the Sinai to Kuntillet Ajrud, where an ancient inscription stuns us: Yahweh and his Asherah. Yes, Yahweh might have had a goddess by his side, something they didn't teach you in Sunday school. Now we drift down the Nile in Egypt to a hidden treasure, the oldest known inscription of Yahweh, etched into an Egyptian temple. But he's not the God of Israel here. He's Yahweh in the land of Shasu, a god of nomadic tribes spread across the deserts of Edom, Midian, and beyond. A wandering deity with an untold origin story. And then we set sail across the Mediterranean to the Aegean, where the Minoan and Mycenaean peoples thrived on the island of Crete. Some scholars think Yahweh may have made it all the way here, taking on a whole new identity, one that's going to blow the lid off everything you thought you knew about this god. So who is Yahweh really? A god of fire? A wanderer? A mysterious figure hiding in plain sight? We'll unravel the secrets of this ancient god, his surprising rise to power, the other gods he might be connected to, and how he became the deity of Israel, and later, the world. This is a journey through myths, mysteries, and revelations you will never forget. Don't miss it. Before we continue, I put a ton of work into editing my videos and doing this full time, as you can see with this documentary. If you're a content creator or wanting to become one, you can revolutionize your video editing experience big time. What I mean is that your next video could bring in some real income. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube are turning creative content into cash. Want to know how these creators are creating viral content and monetizing it to earn money? Introducing Wondershare Filmora 14. It's never been simpler to turn your vision into stunning videos in just a few clicks. This powerful video editor is built specifically for creators like us. From AI-enhanced editing tools like the smart short clips to advanced features such as planar tracking and multi-camera editing, Filmora 14 empowers creators of all skill levels to produce professional-grade videos effortlessly. AI tools do the heavy lifting, so you can focus on what matters, making content that connects, engages, and goes viral. Creating viral content is just the beginning. Filmora 14 helps you grow your following and turn those views into real revenue. With tools to help you perfect every frame, your audience will come back for more, driving up engagement and boosting your income. Ready to bring your ideas to life? Join millions of creators worldwide who trust Filmora to make video editing easy, fast, and fun. Download Wondershare Filmora 14 now, and let's turn your creativity into cash. Get started with Filmora today and start creating your content that pays. Where will your creativity take you? Yahweh, a god whose origins are shrouded in mystery. He seems to appear out of nowhere, and within a millennium, he becomes the god of the Jews, Christians, and eventually Muslims. But how did this happen? The Israelites were once a Canaanite people, and their pantheon was led by El, the chief deity, with Asherah as the queen of heaven, his wife or consort. The history of El can be traced back through the Amorites and even further into Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, where writing first emerged. In this ancient world, El was the head of the Canaanite pantheon, a wise and benevolent creator god, and the father of many gods, including Baal. But where is Yahweh's history, since he never appears in the Canaanite lists? Where was his father, wife, or children before the merging of him into the Israelite pantheon? Does this story go back into the ancient past like El's? If so, where can we find it? Before the Canaanites, the Amorites, a Semitic people who occupied large parts of Mesopotamia, including the regions that would later become Canaan, worshipped El. The Amorites are credited with spreading the worship of El westward into Canaanite regions. The Hittites, another significant power in the ancient Near East, were influenced by neighboring cultures, including the Amorites. While the direct worship of El among the Hittites is less clear, they adopted and adapted many gods from the surrounding cultures. The influence of El stretches even further back into Mesopotamia. In Babylon, the deity Il, or Ilu, was worshipped, a name that appears to be linguistically related to El. However, in Mesopotamia, the supreme deity was often Marduk in later periods, or Anu in earlier times. Other deities like Enki, also known as Ea, play a role in the myth of Adapa, the ancient precursor of Enoch. The story of Enki tricking Adapa into not eating and drinking the food of immortality offered by Anu has echoes in the Adam and Eve story with Yahweh Elohim. A similar overlap is noticed between the vengeful god Enlil taking revenge on humans with a cataclysmic flood and Yahweh, though Yahweh is portrayed in a better light than the much earlier story. The Sumerians, one of the earliest civilizations in the region, had a pantheon headed by Anu, the sky god. Anu's characteristics as a chief deity and father figure have similarities with El, suggesting a potential influence or shared origin. El's history is long and storied, with a son named Baal, but Yahweh is conspicuously absent from these earlier Canaanite or Amorite pantheons. The mystery deepens. Where did Yahweh come from? Have we been looking in all the wrong places for this mystical deity? Two Egyptian texts, however, mention
Yahweh in the land of the Shasu,
meaning nomads, in list of place names around Edom. These texts date to the reigns of Amenophis III, 14th century BCE, and Ramses II, 13th century BCE. It is generally thought that Yahweh must have originally been associated with a mountain of the same name in or near Edom.
These Egyptians inscribed this name of the deity of the Shasu in hieroglyphics on their temple, as it's translated into YHW, which properly pronouncing his name as Yah-O or Ye-O, which is literally the god the Israelites worshipped, later being pronounced as Yahweh. Other variations of the name as Yah-O continued to be used down into the Hellenistic period. Keep this in mind as we get later into this video. It might shock you what you find out.
It's a reconstruction of the Shasu of Yahweh inscription. That's the oldest known mention of Yahweh ever discovered thus far. Later, the Kuntillet Ajrud inscriptions dating around 800 to 750 BCE contain several references to Yahweh, including
Yahweh of Samaria and Yahweh of Teman.
These inscriptions indicate that Yahweh was worshipped in different regions, including Israel, known as Samaria, and Edom, known as Teman. They also include blessings in the name of Yahweh and Asherah, suggesting that Yahweh may have had a consort or was associated with the goddess Asherah. You can see on the map where Kuntillet Ajrud would be located in the Sinai Peninsula, which just so happens to be the area supposedly the Israelites journeyed, escaping Egypt during the Exodus. The earliest epigraphic evidence from the land of Palestine that refers to Yahweh is the Mesha Stele from around 840 BCE. In it, King Mesha of Moab boasts of a campaign in which he devoted the vessels of Yahweh to Chemosh after conquering the city of Nebo from Israel. The cults dedicated to Yahweh and El originated independently of each other before their eventual merger process, still not completed when much of the Old Testament was written. But determining how Yahweh came to be the patron deity of Israel and Judah is not so simple. This is strange because the lack of archaeological evidence has required Bible scholars to rely mostly on the text of the Bible itself. However, by relying on experts in ancient religious metallurgical connections to Yahweh, a deity burning as brightly as the Aten, the notorious god promoted by the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten, and riddled with mystery much like Dionysus, we may discover that Yahweh has even deeper roots stretching further than most scholars have suggested. You could see where the arid Canaanites were located on this map, as well as check out this Arabian map from the 1478, and the tribe in the upper left corner is the one listed that matches the Canaanites. The Canaanite hypothesis, first proposed by theologian F.W. Galani in 1862, suggests that Yahweh was originally the god of the Canaanite tribe before the Israelites settled in Canaan. While this theory initially gained some traction, it lost momentum as modern biblical studies shifted focus to the broader Canaanite context in which Yahweh later emerged. Scholars began to emphasize the influence of Canaanite religion and deities on Israelite beliefs, leading to alternative theories that minimized the specific role of the Canaanites. However, the Canaanite hypothesis is experiencing a resurgence thanks to new findings and a reassessment of biblical text. This renewed interest is prompting scholars to take a fresh look at the potential significance of the Canaanites in the early worship of Yahweh. This video may solve the riddle with the help of the brilliant work of Paul Davidson, creator of the YouTube channel Inquisitive Bible Reader, and the amazing professor Nissim Amzalag. So be sure to check out their links in the description. Also, hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss out on another masterpiece. Comment on your favorite parts and stir up some conversation.
And God said to Moses, I am Yahweh, the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai, but I did not reveal my name, Yahweh, to them.
But I did not reveal my name, Yahweh, to them.
Exodus 6:2-3.
This section and many others will be based on the wonderful work of Nissim Amzalag. In his article, A Metallurgical Perspective on the Birth of Ancient Israel, 2021, Dr. Nissim Amzalag says, 50 years ago, Mircea Eliade made a bold assertion. The discovery and mastery of metals didn't just revolutionize how humans interacted with the material world, it transformed their very understanding of the universe. Metallurgy, he argued, opened up a whole new mythological and religious landscape. Today, anthropologists back up this claim, showing that metallurgy wasn't just a craft, but a sacred practice in many traditional societies across Africa and India. The ancient Near East tells a similar story, especially during the Bronze Age. Here, gods like Ptah, as well as Khnum in Egypt and Volcanos in Crete, weren't just blacksmiths, they were creators, vital forces of life itself. Even in Mesopotamia, Enki, the god of smiths, was revered as a wise creator and protector of humanity. Pause. We need to set Dr. Amzalag's work aside for a moment, and we will return. Let's take a detour into ancient gods and the well with which many of these deities spring forth with these attributes. One should not be surprised to see that gods and humans have mingled long before written history. But even in written history, we find interesting pieces to the puzzle of how these deities and cultures overlap. Let us don the cap of Sir James George Fraser for a moment and look at potential connections and similarities between deities which could potentially help us see Yahweh in a new light. Suggesting that Yahweh is a metallurgy deity, we should look to other gods in the known pantheons around the known world and see if we can connect some possible dots. Being Midian is in West Asia, which is geographically close to Egypt, and is a place where Moses escapes Egypt to flee after murdering an Egyptian, as well as finds out the name of this god Yahweh, which was never known by that name to his fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So let's start here with a few Egyptian gods. Ptah. In Egyptian mythology, Ptah was a creator god and the patron of craftsmen, including metalworkers and architects. He was believed to have created the world by thought, which is your heart, and word, which is your tongue, embodying the importance of creation and craft, very, very similar to the Genesis creation story. In Memphis, where Ptah was the chief deity, craftsmen, especially those working with metal, were held in high regard, reflecting the god's importance. Check out the statue of Ptah displayed at the Egyptian Museum of Turin, Italy. It dates between 1390 and 1353 BC. Ptah, revered as the god of craftsmanship and metallurgy, was considered the patron of artisans and creators. His role in Egyptian mythology encompassed the shaping and crafting of both the physical world and the spiritual essence of life, making him a central figure in the ancient Egyptian understanding of creation and skilled labor. Khnum. While primarily known as the god who fashioned humans' bodies from clay on his potter's wheel, including the one who gives breath to those in the egg, Khnum was also associated with the creation of materials, including metals. In some traditions, Khnum's role extended to overseeing the skills of craftsmen, further elevating the status of those who worked with metal. The high status of metalworkers in ancient Egypt reflects the profound respect for their role in shaping not only the physical, but also the spiritual world, as their work was considered a direct continuation of the god's creative acts. In this depiction from the Dendera temple, Khnum, as seen on the left, he's shown fashioning the god Ihi on a potter's wheel, similar to how Yahweh is told to be using a potter's wheel, with the assistance of the frog-headed goddess Higket. Khnum, the god of creation and craftsmanship, is believed to mold life itself, while Higket, associated with fertility and childbirth, symbolizes the bread of life. Together, they represent the divine process of creation, with Ihi, the youthful god of music and joy, emerging as a result of their sacred work. Here's another depiction of the ancient god Khnum on the right, alongside the lioness goddess Minhit on the left. Adorns the outer wall of the temple of Esna. Khnum, the ram-headed god of creation, water and metallurgy, was believed to fashion humans on his potter's wheel and oversees the crafting of metals, further emphasizing his role in shaping both life and civilization. Menhit, often associated with war and protection, complements him as a fierce and powerful deity, seen like Asherah as well. The scene symbolizes the balance between creation, craftsmanship, and divine strength in Egyptian religious art. Enki, Ea. In Mesopotamian mythology, Enki, known as Ea in Akkadian, was a god of wisdom, water, creation, and craft, including the arts of metalworking. While not exclusively a smithing god, Enki was associated with the skills and knowledge necessary for creating civilization, including metallurgy. I mean, this god is said to have crafted the world in their mythology. Also, the city of Eridu, sacred to Enki, was one of the earliest centers of urban culture, where such crafts were highly valued. Many scholars have long recognized comparisons between Enki and Yahweh, like the act of warning their respective flood heroes Noah and Utnapishtim of the coming judgment. Both of these deities have also been seen as a Prometheus-like character, trickster gods, with Enki sneaking around the pantheon to warn humans, or even tricking Adapa about the food and water of life, while Yahweh seems to have tricked the humans into thinking they would die the same day they ate the fruit from the forbidden tree. Kula. A lesser-known god, Kula, was the Sumerian god of bricks and construction, sometimes also associated with the crafts required for building, including metalworking. Although not as prominent as Enki, Kula's role emphasizes the divine importance of those who create the physical world, including smiths. Volcanos is an ancient Minoan god closely connected to vegetation and was widely worshipped in Crete. As one of the major deities in the Minoan pantheon, he was often associated with a mother goddess who was both his mother and consort. Together they were believed to engage in sacred marriage, or herosgamos, symbolizing the unity of life-giving forces. Check out this depiction of the Minoan Zeus Volcanos facing a bull. It highlights the deep connections between divinity and nature in Minoan religion. Also, we're looking at a late Minoan period depiction of cult processions showing Minoans carrying offerings, with the prominent figure of the cupbearer leading the way. These processions, central to Minoan religious practices, highlight the importance of ritual offerings to the gods, symbolizing devotion and the role of ceremonial leaders within the community. This collection of sacral terracottas from Gazi near Heraklion, dating to 1300 around to 1100 BCE, features goddesses with upraised arms. These figurines likely represent a form of religious worship, symbolizing the divine power and protection. Their posture reflects the Minoan and Mycenaean traditions of honoring deities, offering a glimpse into the spiritual practices of ancient Crete. Look at this bronze shield from Crete, geometric period, 8th to 7th century BCE. Looks almost like a Gilgamesh-type figure on the actual shield. Very, very interesting. Here's a Minoan copper ingot from Zakros, Crete. It highlights the extensive mining, since we're dealing with metallurgy, and the trade networks of the ancient world, showcasing the far-reaching influence of resource extraction during this era. Such artifacts underscore the importance of metallurgy in ancient societies, a practice that holds significant relevance in understanding the origins of Yahweh. The worship of volcanoes may have been influenced by the Mesopotamian god Dumuzid, also known as Tammuz according to scholars, reflecting cultural exchanges in the ancient world. As Mycenaean Greece rose in power and came into contact with the Minoans, the cult of volcanoes synchronized into the development of Zeus's worship. In fact, Zeus was sometimes known as Zeus Volcanos, indicating a blending of religious traditions. Additionally, many scholars suggest that volcanoes may have influenced the Roman god Vulcan, given the similarities in their names and aspects of their worship. Crete is home to one of humanity's most ancient civilizations. the human presence on Crete may indeed reach as far back into the earliest epochs of history. In 2002, 6.05 million-year-old human-like footprints were discovered on the island. Now, debate rages as to their significance. However, the discovery of 130,000-year-old stone tools have incontrovertibly confirmed a Paleolithic human presence on Crete. Based upon this discovery, the historic timeline for seafaring has now been pushed back by thousands of years. Suffice it to say, there truly can be no doubt regarding the extreme antiquity of Cretan civilization. You can see the footprints that are literally stuck in the stone that we can look at today. Beautiful images. Moving forward into recorded history, civilization blossomed in Crete long before the Greek Mycenaean era. The religion of ancient Crete served as a template for the Greeks of the classical age. Its religious and mystical sites were places of pilgrimage, for it was the birthplace of Zeus himself. Thus, rather than just another civilization, Crete was both the economic and religious epicenter of ancient Mediterranean high civilization. Pointing again at the ancient and globally prevalent presence of Sanskrit, scholars have recognized a clear relationship between ancient Minoan Linear A and Sanskrit. A brief review of this evidence provides some startling insights into the nature of ancient Minoan and Mycenaean religion and belief. Look at these Minoan inscriptions written in the mysterious Linear A. They date back to 1850 to 1450 BC and were discovered in Phaistos, Crete, now housed in the Archaeological Museum of Heraklion. They offer a tantalizing glimpse into the language and culture of the ancient Minoan civilization, whose script remains largely undeciphered to this day. Over 100 years ago, Jane Harrison, one of the world's leading experts on Greek religion, wrote of an ancient hymn to Koros called the Hymn of Koretes. It is in praise of Megistos Koros, the greatest and youthful at the head of the gods. Look at the hymn of Zeus Koretes limestone that is written in stone. In this image, you can see the whole stone slab with the different fragmented sections. In this image, though, it's zoomed in, showing you the writing up close. Dr. Jane Ellen Harrison is a brilliant classical scholar. She revolutionized the study of ancient Greek religion and mythology. As a key figure in the Cambridge Ritualists, her work on ritual and Greek practices reshaped classical studies and continues to influence modern scholarship. Found in an ancient temple on the island of Crete, it is one of history's most important discoveries, that stone slab that we just showed you, in understanding of ancient religion. Addressed to Zeus in his youthful form as Koros Velkanos, this hymn was inscribed on both sides of that limestone slab, 4 fragments of which were recovered from votive pits near Roussalakos at Pelakastro, Crete in 1904. This discovery confirmed that Pelakastro was the site of the ancient Dictaeon, the sanctuary famed in antiquity for the worship of Zeus. Jane Harrison, Themis, a study of the social origins of Greek religion. Take a look at this paper where it's actually trying to translate that script. This book reveals that the worship of baby Zeus as Koros is at the very origins of ancient Minoan and Greek religion. Zeus is identified as Kouros, the youthful and the greatest. He is identified as the divine boy who was hidden away at birth and given to another to be as his mother. Arthur Evans, the famous discoverer of a Minoan civilization, classified him as a divine child or a youth. Here's a series of 2,500-year-old presos, Cretan coins, depicting this same baby Zeus being nursed by a cow. You could see it on the left, the right, and the center next to this bird image. Looks like an owl. In fact, this was one of the most popular coins of the region. Young Zeus is presented in ancient Minoan art as a long-haired youth, and hymned to as Homegas Kouros, or the Great Youth. He is surrounded by Kouretes, young men initiates of the Kouros tradition. They were a band of ecstatic armed dancers, protecting the infant Zeus. This same element is present in the Indic Vaishnava tradition as well. Thus, the cowherd men, led by child Krishna's adopted father, Nanda Maharaj, protected the youth as he was suckled by cows. Coincidence?
Kouros most great, I glorify you, Cronion, Lord of all that is moist and gleaming. You stand at the head of all gods. Rejoice in our dance and our song, with lyre and flutes as we sing around your altar. Hymn to Kouros, the divine youth of Crete.
Young Zeus, known as Kouros, was also named Velkanos. Here, the W in the name is pronounced as a V, and the ch is pronounced as k. So Velchanos should be Valkanos, and has thus been confused with the demigod Vulcanus, which probably merged at some point together. Some scholars doubt that Velkanos, or Velkanos, Kouros, and Zeus are one. Yet the only proof they give is that his name is found along with the name of Zeus within the same prayer. Thus they say he must be a totally different god. However, if we applied this to any Vedic mantra, we can easily see the inaccuracies of this conclusion. It's an example of scholars with no background in devotional practice of any of the living sacred traditions. They reach a mundane conclusion. Using logic, the entire Hari Haraya Nama Krishna hymn would be about 100 different gods competing for worship and prayers. Check out the beautiful art of Krishna. Here is a drawing of ivory boys from Palicastro around 1600 to 1500 BC. This drawing is from Evans at the Palace of Minos, Volume 3, 1930. Then there's the actual child, the artifact that you can see. That's baby Zeus, Kouros. And then you'll notice that there's the baby divine boy, Braj Bal Kanya, Krishna, the young divine boy of Krishna. As Velchanos, pronounced Velkanos, is potentially a dialectical version of the Sanskrit Balakana, Velkanos is actually a later Greek pronunciation of the original Minoan. Beyond the name, the commonalities become obvious when comparing the attributes, characteristics, and legends of Velkanos Kouros, the divine boy of ancient Crete, and Balkanya Krishna, the divine boy of Brahadam, Vrindavan. Kouros is always represented as a youthful beardless god, often in gesture of worship or adoration to a female goddess. This silver stater from ancient Crete, dating around 330 to 320 BC, depicts Velkanos seated within a tree. In his right hand, he holds a rooster perched on his knee, while his left hand rests on his seat, embodying the balance of nature and divinity in one striking image. Volcanos was frequently depicted on the coins of Phaistos seated among the branches of a tree. The bird's symbolism is also significant and relates to the eagle, hawk, rooster that is always associated with the divinity of Zeus, Vishnu, Helios. Like all these forms of God, Volcanos was also depicted as an eagle. Lord Krishna is seen here, sitting in a tree with a peacock and cows. Volcanos also sits in a tree with a cock, which is substituted for the tropical peacock, accompanied by cows. Here's another coin of Zeus as young Volcanos sitting in a tree. In the right hand holds a rooster, bull rushing, sometimes walking. A series of 2,500-year-old Presos Cretan coins depicts the same baby Zeus being nursed by a cow, similar to how Krishna was nursed by a cow. Just want to nail that home to seeing overlap by very distant cultures. Rather than an obscure regional cult, Volcanos worship was widespread and long-lasting. A Vulcania festival was long celebrated, and it endured through the centuries down into the Hellenistic era. Inscriptions at Gortyn and Litos record a Vulcania festival, showing that Volcanios was still widely venerated in Hellenistic Crete. In the Hellenistic period, a small sanctuary dedicated to Zeus Volcanos was founded at the Hagia Triada site of a long-ruined Minoan palace, Zeus at Mythos. One of the lateral faces of the Hagia Triada sarcophagus that was found at Crete, Greece. The Volcanos tradition of ancient Crete was at the core of classical Greek culture. This is confirmed by the ancient book Plato's Laws. The characters of the book engage in a dialogue on the origins of civilization as they proceed on their religious pilgrimage from Knossos to the Cave of Zeus. This Cave of Zeus is the sacred birthplace of Zeus as the divine child, Volcanos Chorus. The dramatic setting of Plato's Laws is along the pilgrimage route to one such site, emphasizing archaic Cretan knowledge. Sacred pilgrimage routes connected to Volcanos reflect yet another vital ingredient of the tradition. Pilgrims such as those highlighted by Plato followed specific routes directly connected to Zeus and his associated legends. These same pilgrimage routes are found in the Vedic Vaishnava tradition as well. They are called Pakrama Marga. Devotees walk along a specific sacred trail directly connected to Krishna and his associated legends. The same exact motif of a divine boy being nursed by a cow is a very ancient theme of Indian Vaishnavism and is still found in Vaishnava art of modern India. Here is a 2,200-year-old coin with Zeus and his eagle as a rose representing the goddess Rhoda, which is Greek for rose, at his feet. And then some scholars suggest the person on the right in this image of this coin is Yahweh. Some say this is Zeus. This is a 4th century BC coin, and around this period we start to see syncretism of both deities in written history happening. Notice the eagle in the deity's hand, just like Zeus in the previous images. This entire Volcanos detour, which apparently shows shared similarities to Zeus and Vishnu in several ways, makes me think of these Cretans who once had a tomb of Zeus where the supposed corpse of Zeus lay. The claim that Cretans are always liars in the New Testament Greek texts and Paul's syncretism, technically the author of Acts of the Apostles, where he quotes the Greek poets Epimenides of Crete from the 6th century BCE.
For in him we live and move and have our being.
Also Arates of Sully from the 3rd century BCE.
We are his offspring.
Brings to mind that these authors saw shared heritage deep into the past with statements about Zeus and Yahweh. Paul is quoting a pagan author, Epimenides, who was a Cretan poet. In his poem, Critica, Epimenides accuses the Cretans of being liars and evil beasts because they claim to host a tomb of Zeus, chief of the gods. Since Zeus
lives and abides forever,
the Cretans must be liars. Paul quotes from this same poem in his sermon to the Areopagus in Acts 17:28. We know he's using the Greek poet to point out that Jesus is also not dead, though he was in a tomb. Just like Zeus isn't dead even if Cretans have a tomb for him. Crete also claimed to be the birthplace of Zeus, known in antiquity as the Dictaeon Cave, which legend placed on the slopes of Mount Ida, Crete's tallest mountain. Reputedly from Gnosis, Epimenides was supposed to have the gift of prophecy, which was bestowed on him after he allegedly slept for 57 years in a cave sacred to Zeus. Crete's Mount Ida is the island's highest summit, sacred to the goddess Rhea, and wherein lies the legendary Idaean Cave, in which baby Zeus was concealed from his father Cronus. It is one of a number of caves believed to have been the birthplace or hiding place of Zeus. The Curetes, a band of mythical warriors, undertook to dance their wild, noisy war dances in front of the cave, so that the clamor would keep Cronus from hearing the infants crying. On the flank of this mountain is the Amari Valley, the site of expansion by the ancient settlement at Phaistos. Its modern name is Siloritis. The surrounding area and mountain used to be thickly wooded. Then there's the sacred mount of Euctus. It's the final resting place of the greatest god of Greek antiquity. Whilst the claim of Crete to be the birthplace of Zeus has been widely accepted, the myth that the god also died and was buried in the island is unique to Crete. According to the legend, the shape of Mount Euctus, when viewed from the west, reveals the profile of a bearded head reclining as in sleep or in death, and represent the face of Zeus. Right here, according to the myth, in the mountain lies his tomb. I'm reminded of the wonderful work of Dr. Robert Cargill called Cities That Built the Bible, where he points out how geography impacts the myths of cultures. Take, for example, the biblical story of Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt. Notice this story takes place right around the Dead Sea, where pillars of salt, a natural phenomena, are visually seen by anyone traveling the area. It seems that the geography influenced the myths told with that particular culture. In this image, you see a rock that is looking like it's standing tall, which some have identified as Lot's wife. However, there were also tall salt pillars that people have identified with her as well. Following his death, God Zeus, legend states, was reborn annually in a springtime. There is evidence of a shrine on the peak of Mount Euctus that has been identified as the earliest temple of Minoan Crete. According to the excavations, the bull sacrifice was a part of the rituals enacted in the building as well as unequivocal evidence having been found for the ritual of human sacrifice. And you can see on a map where the island and Mount Euctus would be. This idea of Cretans are always liars comes from an earlier source. Athenodorus of Eretria, in the 8th book of his commentaries, says that Thetis and Medea had a dispute in Thessaly as to which was the most beautiful. Their judge was Idomeneus, who gave the victory to Thetis. Medea, in anger, said that the Cretans are always liars, and in revenge, she made the curse that he would never speak the truth, just as he had lied in his judgment. It is from that, he says, that Cretans pass as liars. Athenodorus cites, as author of this story, Antiochus in his 2nd book of Legends of the Cities. Man, that sucks to have a myth give you a permanent stain of being liars. Maybe they really were commonly told as liars, and that stain stuck to them in mythology, but if not, that really sucks. Idomeneus was a mythical warrior during the Trojan War and king of Crete. It was said by mythographer Apollodorus of Athens that after the war, Idomeneus' ship hit a terrible storm. He promised Poseidon that he would sacrifice the first living thing he saw when he returned home if Poseidon would save his ship and crew. The first living thing was his son, whom Idomeneus duly sacrificed. This sounds very similar to the story of Jephthah in the book of Judges. Just to show that Cretans have a long, deep past connecting with the region of the world near where the Canaanites would have been located, here is an image of Cretans bringing gifts to Egypt in the tomb of Rekhmire under Pharaoh Thutmosis III. This was around 1479 to 1425 BC. Clearly, getting back to the book of Acts, it's obviously trying to blend philosophy with the apparent statement that Zeus isn't dead as an example of this unknown god, who is a living god. Again, echoing the Cretans are always liars mantra. However, I bet if we did a bit of digging, we would find this idea of Zeus having a tomb to stretch back into very, very ancient times, when gods were actually known to die. This is a modern idea that gods are completely immortal and cannot die. Either way, seeing Yahweh and Zeus, or even Yahweh and Dionysus, or Zeus Dionysus, was a common perception in the ancient Greek and Roman world. For crying out loud, the entire Maccabean War was over Zeus Yahweh, or non-Hellenized versions of Yahweh worship in the temple, which also included Dionysus in 3rd Maccabees, but we'll get there. How far back do these shared mythologies really go? Do they touch each other during the Bronze Age? I wouldn't be shocked if there was much more overlap between these various regions during the Bronze Age, meaning I could see us finding some connections between the gods Zeus and Yahweh, or Dionysus and Yahweh in the Bronze Age. The region of Edom, exactly 19 miles north of the Gulf of Aqaba, the area is rich in copper ore and has been mined since the 5th millennium BCE. That's 7,000 years ago. Humans have mining this area for a very long time. This area would have been part of the kingdom of Edom, where the Midianites were located. You can see the land of Edom in its proximation between Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Israel, West Bank, and Jordan, and notice it also touches the Dead Sea. That's important as we dive forward to Yahweh's origins. There's so much more to say. Pottery by the Midianites, called kariyah, painted ware, is found at several sites stretching from the southern Levant to northwest Arabia, meaning that's where the Hijaz is located. This is where the original location of manufacture is. The pottery is biochrome, polychrome style, and it dates as early as the 13th century BC. Midianite pottery is found in its largest quantities at metallurgical sites in the southern Levant, especially Timna. You know, where the famous Timna Valley is located? Because of the Mycenaean motifs on Midianite pottery, some scholars, including George Mendenhall, Peter Parr, and Ben Rothenberg, have suggested that the Midianites were originally sea peoples who migrated from the Aegean region and imposed themselves on a pre-existing Semitic stratum. Think about that. How did Mycenaean art in the pottery make its way all the way to this place in Edom from the Aegean, if they aren't sea peoples relocating in the area? That is the Aegean Sea. Then you can also see on the east side of the Mediterranean, Israel, Jerusalem, and further down, Jordan. Right there in that area is where they relocated. The question of the origin of the Midianites still remains open, but speculate with me for a moment as we move forward into the origins of Yahweh and the birth of Israel. Suppose these Midianites were Mycenaeans who continued some form of their culture, as is noticed in their pottery, including elements of their divinities. Could we see elements of Yahweh which may overlap or be introduced to this deity through this cross-cultural integration? This god Kos may be the Edomite Yahweh, as some scholars suppose. Look at this Nabatean depiction of the goddess Atargatis, dating around 100 AD. The eagle on her head is believed to be a symbol of Kos. This was also the symbol of Zeus and other gods. Truth be told, many Minoan gods and religious conceptions were fused in the Mycenaean religion. From the existing evidence, it appears that the Mycenaean religion was the mother of the Greek religion. The Mycenaean pantheon already included many divinities that can be found in classical Greece, such as Poseidon, Demeter, Artemis, Paeon, Athena, Dionysus, Zeus, Hera, Hephaestus, Ares, Hermes, and many, many more. So take Dionysus for instance. This god goes way back into the ancient Mycenaean pantheon as a son of Zeus and as a wine god, and much, much more. We can only decipher the Linear B script, but seems to predate this language barrier. A curious question arises. What are the odds that somewhere in the distant past, such as the time when these Mycenaeans invaded the Midianite regions, where Yahweh seems to originate, brought their gods with them, including this Yahweh? Or suppose the local deity was this Yahweh deity and elements were incorporated to him when they settled in the region. What if the Near Eastern myths went west sometime way, way back and influenced the Dionysus god's myth, and this myth somehow made its way back over to the east into the Midianite region when the Sea Peoples relocated to these regions? Did Dionysus and Yahweh have independent evolutions with zero origins in relation to each other? Is it also possible that Yahweh somehow moved into the Greek pantheon as Dionysus, starting from the east and moved west? Theophoric names, which incorporate the name of a deity, were common in ancient Israel, with examples like Elijah, Isaiah, and Jonathan, reflecting devotion to Yahweh. Some scholars have explored potential connections between Yahweh and Dionysus through these names, suggesting that the idea may not be as fringe as once thought and could have deeper historical roots. For instance, the Greek name Ionis, John, is a Hellenized form of the Hebrew name Yohanan, meaning
Yahweh has been gracious.
While some have noted the resemblance between Ionis and Greek names containing Io or Yao, a transliteration of Yahweh, there is a possibility that these ancient connections could reflect ancient syncretism rather than mere phonetic coincidence. Another intriguing figure is Iacchus, associated with Dionysus in certain mystery religions, whose name also bears similarity to Yao, which is that Yahweh name, raising the question of whether such linguistic connections might date back to a more distant past.
Remember the Egyptian Shasu inscription and how the ancient name was pronounced? Yao was the name, which sounds awfully similar to both the Israelite worship of Yahweh and Greek Dionysus Yao.
These ideas emerge from the broader context of Hellenistic religious syncretism, where Greek and Jewish cultures blended, but possibly reflecting older shared traditions. For instance, the use of wine in Jewish rituals might have led to associations with Dionysus by Greek and Roman observers, like Plutarch and Tacitus, who sometimes linked Yahweh with Bacchus, Dionysus. These connections, rather than being superficial, may hint at a deeper and more ancient intertwining of religious practices and deities. Historical references to a supposed festival of Dionysus in Judea don't appear until the time of the Maccabees. The general claim in 1 Maccabees 1, 51, 54, 55 that Antiochus Epiphanes forced the Jews to sacrifice in the Greek manner is expanded in 2 Maccabees 6:7, and you can compare it to 3 Maccabees 2:29, to say that the Jews were compelled to participate in Dionysian festivals and even to adorn themselves with ivy, chisos. As a result, Hippolytus, a church father of the 2nd century, saw Antiochus Epiphanes as the prototype of the Antichrist. However, this entire narrative is widely regarded as unhistorical. Even the account in 3 Maccabees, which refers to Egyptian matters, lacks plausibility. Although Dionysus was the patron deity of the Egyptian Ptolemies, the Syrian Seleucids always worshipped Zeus. Nevertheless, Dionysian festivals were celebrated in every country under Greek influence. Antiochus XI even bore the byname Dionysus. You can see the source in Josephus' Antiquities 13:15-1. And Nicanor, a general of Demetrius, threatened to dedicate a temple in Jerusalem to Dionysus unless Judas Maccabeus was handed over to him, 2 Maccabees 14:33. Thus, the Seleucids might indeed have pressured the Jews into similar worship. It's certain that the Jews of Egypt were forced to worship Dionysus, though this persecution likely occurred within the Nomos of Arsinoe, 3 Maccabees 2:29. Furthermore, it is said in 3 Maccabees 2:30 that those who chose to join the Dionysian mysteries would receive the same civic rights as the Alexandrians. Under Ptolemy IV Philopator, citizenship for Egyptian Jews depended on their participation in Dionysian worship, which many could not accept, likely preventing them from becoming full citizens under his rule. Plutarch connects a myth of Dionysus with the Palestinian city of Scyllapolis. Pliny and Solinus assert that the city's name derives from the Scythians, whom Dionysus supposedly settled there to protect his nurse's tomb. The Greeks and Romans were convinced that the Jews worshipped Dionysus based on some superficial similarities or potentially real ones. Plutarch speculated that the name of the Jewish Sabbath derived from Sabos, the cry of the ecstatic Bacchantes, Bacchants. More specifically, he suggested that the Jewish Feast of Tabernacles, celebrated in the temple at Jerusalem, was actually a form of Dionysian worship. He reasoned,
the Jews celebrate their most important feast during the time of the vintage. They pile all sorts of fruit on their tables, live in tents made mostly from vine and ivy branches, and call the first day of this festival the Feast of Tabernacles. A few days later, they celebrate another feast, invoking Bacchus by name. During this festival, they carry branches of fig trees and thyrsi. They enter the temple, where they likely celebrate Bacchanalia, as they use small trumpets, and some among them, the Levites, play on the cithara. Symposium 4.5.3.
Plutarch likely had specific ceremonies of Sukkot in mind. Tacitus echoed similar claims.
As their priests sing to the accompaniment of flutes and kettle drums, and as they deck themselves with laurel, and as a golden vine was found in their temple, many believe they worship Bacchus, the conqueror of the East. However, the two cults have nothing in common, for Bacchus established a bright and joyous ritual, while the customs of the Jews are strange and morose.
The golden vine Tacitus refers to, which Herod presented to the temple, is also mentioned by Josephus, Antiquities 15:11-3, and it is still existed at the temple's destruction, later carried off by Titus. Tacitus's account, like Plutarch's, links the Jewish rituals during Sukkot to Dionysian worship. Plutarch even associated the Jewish worship of Bacchus with the high priest's garment, which he noted had bells similar to those used in the Bacchanalia, and he ambiguously referred to a thyrsus and drums on the priest's frontlet or breastplate. Scholars have speculated about a barrel-opening festival, Bithogia equals Venalia, but this theory lacks solid evidence to many scholars. In describing the high priest's garment, Plutarch deliberately used terms reminiscent of Dionysian worship. It's likely that such equivocal expressions, possibly borrowed from Hellenistic sources, led him to the erroneous conclusion that Jews had a cult of Dionysus. In reality, the palm branch used in the Feast of Tabernacles was called a thyrsus by Hellenists, Josephus, Antiquities 13:13-5 and 2 Maccabees 10:7, which could easily remind a Greek of the Dionysian thyrsus. Plutarch also seems to have known about the Feast of the Drawing of Water, which, with its exuberant joy, resembled the Bacchanalia. Neither Tacitus's nor Plutarch's statements suggest they were drawing from anti-Jewish Alexandrian sources, as some scholars propose. Instead, a Greek might have considered it a compliment to link Jewish ceremonies with familiar pagan practices. It's also worth considering that these similarities may actually have roots which go back into antiquity, long before Hellenism. Anywho, remember the biblical account in Judges where it tells us for 20 years the Israelites were oppressed by Jabin, the king of Hazor? and his powerful general Sisera, who commanded 900 iron chariots. But things changed when the prophetess Deborah encouraged Barak, an Israelite leader, to fight back. With an army of 10,000, they faced Sisera at Mount Tabor in the Jezreel Valley. Against all odds, the Israelites won the battle, with the Bible even saying that the stars and the Kishon River helped defeat Sisera's forces. This victory brought 40 years of peace to the land. After the battle, Sisera escaped on foot and sought refuge in the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber, the Kenite. She seemed to offer him a safe place to rest, giving him milk and covering him with a blanket. But while he slept, Jael took a tent peg and hammered it through his head, killing him instantly. Later, the prophet Samuel reminded the Israelites that their suffering under Sisera was a result of forgetting their God, a lesson they were not to forget. You could see the art of Jael's wife penetrating the temple of the Canaanite general Sisera. Imagine you were the one that happened to. Wild. Gives me chills. The origin of Sisera's name is a bit of a mystery. Scholars have debated its roots, suggesting connections to various ancient cultures. Some think his name might be Philistine, Hittite, Hurrian, or even Egyptian, with the name possibly meaning servant of Ra, the Egyptian sun god. However, Israeli scholar and archaeologist Adam Zertal offers a different perspective. He suggests that Sisera might have been one of the Shurden, a group of sea people, and that he may have come from the island of Sardinia. This theory adds an intriguing twist to the story, linking Sisera to a broader network of ancient civilizations. Just look at this map and how far in the western region of the Mediterranean Sea Sardinia is. That's how much people traveled in the ancient world, if the connection is valid. Sardinia is really close to Italy. That's a pretty good distance. However, those mysterious sea peoples came from all over the world, and many settled in Canaan. One such group was likely the Philistines. This group gets a bad rap from the Bible, but under closer scrutiny, one can actually see they may have close connections to the tribe of Dan. No wonder David could go and join their forces against Saul when King Saul was hunting David's head. The overlap between these sea peoples and the Bible's history may be much, much bigger than we realize. Here's some Philistine pottery from Ashkelon. The tribe of Dan, also known as Dantes, might have had real connections with the sea peoples, a confederation of naval raiders to which the Philistines are often linked. These theories propose that the Danites could have been part of this wider group, or at least influenced by them, before settling in Israel. Factoring this in, no wonder mythical extraordinary Samson, who is from the tribe of Dan, has so many parallels to Heracles, also known as Hercule by the Etruscans. Here's a 3,000-year-old archaeological find at Tel Dan. It suggests that the Danites were Aegean soldiers. Was Samson Greek? Remember that Volcanos god we associated with Zeus, Krishna, and Vulcan earlier? Well, many scholars have seen the obvious connections between this god and the Roman god Vulcan. Vulcan, Latin Vulcanus or Vulcanus, is the ancient Roman god of fire, associated with volcanoes, deserts, metalworking, and the forge. He is typically depicted wielding a blacksmith's hammer, symbolizing his role as a divine craftsman. Vulcan was honored with an annual festival called the Vulcanelia, held on August the 23rd. In Roman mythology, Vulcan is equivalent to the Greek god Hephaestus, who also governs fire and smithery. In Etruscan religion, Vulcan is identified with the god Sethlands. Sethlands was the god of fire, the forge, metalworkings, and by extension, craftsmanship in general. The equivalent, though their names share no etymology, to the Greek Hephaestus, Egyptian Ptah, and the Roman Vulcan. Sethlands is one of the indigenous Etruscan gods. In Etruscan arts, Sethlands may be identified by his tools, the hammer and tongs of the blacksmith, and by the pileus, or conical cap, he wears. Here are the remains of the 4th century BCE temple platform at the Etruscan city of Vulci, Velch. There is some beautiful art of Vulcan that we can find at Pompeii, amazing fresco, as well as other more modern art, The Forge of Vulcan by Diego Velázquez, 1630. Remember in the last section when I asked, how far back do these shared mythologies really go? Bronze Age? Well, this is exactly what Dr. Amzalog covers in an article on his academia page called Was Yahweh Worshipped in the Aegean? Up until now, the Bible has been our only source of information about the worship of Yahweh. But let's not forget, the Bible is a collection of writings with a clear agenda, promoting monotheism. This makes it tricky, if not impossible, to determine how much of what's written actually reflects the original worship practices of Yahweh in Canaan. Was it a genuine reflection of ancient rituals, or was it heavily edited to push a Yahwistic monotheistic reform? Because of this, any attempts to uncover the original cult of Yahweh are basically interpretations or educated guesses based on the biblical text. But imagine for a moment if we found evidence of Yahweh worship outside the Bible. This could open up a whole new field of investigation. And this isn't just a wild idea. The prophet Amos mentions other peoples besides Israel who also called upon the name of Yahweh. The Bible hints at Yahweh being worshipped in various places like Egypt, Elam, Tubal, Meshech, and even the land of Cush. One of the best clues comes from the book of Isaiah.
Therefore, in the east, give glory to Yahweh. In the coastlands of the sea, give glory to the name of Yahweh, the God of Israel. Isaiah 24:15.
Later, these islanders are described as passionate followers of Yahweh.
They give glory to Yahweh and declare his praise in the coastlands. Isaiah 42:12.
Another verse says,
The coastlands will wait for me, and for my arm they will hope. Isaiah 51:5.
suggesting that Yahweh wasn't seen as some secondary deity in these places. The exact location of these islands isn't clear in Isaiah. It could be referring to Phoenician colonies scattered across the Mediterranean. This would make sense, given the Phoenician influences in Isaiah's language. Or it could be pointing to the Aegean region, as the book of Daniel seems to suggest in Daniel 11:18. Now, during the first millennium BCE, we don't have any evidence of Yahweh worship in Greece or the Phoenician colonies. So this whole islands thing might just be a poetic way of saying Yahweh's power extended far and wide. But there's another intriguing possibility. Yahweh might have been worshipped in these islands under a different name, a reality that was erased by later monotheistic reforms and forgotten over time. This theory is what we'll explore as we dive into the potential worship of Yahweh in the Aegean. Especially since it was Zeus that Antiochus introduced in the Jerusalem temple. But Antiochus wasn't trying to replace the Israelites' god with the chief deity of the Greek pantheon. Instead, he aimed to worship the mysterious great god of Jerusalem in a Greek style. Similarly, in Rome, Yahweh was referred to as Theos Hypstistos, the high god, and was essentially merged with Jupiter, the top god of their pantheon. While many ancient Jewish authors accepted the equivalence between Zeus Jupiter and Yahweh, it doesn't necessarily mean they thought these gods were the same in nature. It might just reflect their shared status as supreme rulers of the universe. However, to sidestep the issue of this statutory analogy with Yahweh, it's worth looking at sources that compare Greek deities to Yahweh outside the confines of monotheism. Late antiquity, for instance, saw Yahweh associated with magicians and sorcerers who invoked him by names like Yao, Yo, or Eyo. Macrobius, in one of his works, mentions a Greek magic oracle where Yao, Yahweh, is seen as the equivalent of 4 different Greek gods: Hades in winter, Zeus in spring, Helios in summer, and Yao himself in autumn. The source is Saturnalia 1:18-20. This gives a nod to our little astrotheology friends. What stands out here is the idea that Yahweh and Dionysus, the god who reigns in autumn, the season of the grape harvest, are one and the same, both called by the name Yao. This suggests that Dionysus might actually be the Greek version of Yahweh. Plutarch supports this intriguing claim, as his quest to uncover the deepest secrets of Dionysus led him to none other than the god of the Hebrews.
This god Yao goes all the way back to the Shasu inscription from Egypt in the 14th century BCE, making the overlap between these deities linguistically obvious at this point.
The connection between Yahweh and Dionysus doesn't stop there. In Thrace, a blend of Yahweh worship and the cult of Sabazius, the Thracian Dionysus, emerged, bringing Jews and pagans together in the same religious community. This level of syncretism between the exclusive worship of Yahweh and another god wasn't seen with Zeus Jupiter or any other deity. Additionally, the wave of Hellenism in Canaan led to a remarkable surge in the worship of Dionysus, a phenomenon not observed with any other Greek god. A strange observance can be seen with the Thracian Zalmoxis god, which is likely another form of Dionysus, hinting at this exclusive worship of one god. Herodotus wrote in his 5th century BCE histories in Book 4, Section 94.
Furthermore, when there is thunder and lightning, these same Thracians shoot arrows skyward as a threat to the god, believing in no other god but their own.
Considering all of these points together, It's worth seriously rethinking the idea that Dionysus might be the Greek counterpart of Yahweh, the God of Israel, as mentioned in the book of Isaiah. If Yahweh and Dionysus really do share an ancient common source or origin, then we should be able to spot some shared symbols or rituals in their worship. Let's dive into one of the most compelling connections, their relation to wine. In Greece, wine was seen as a divine gift from Dionysus to humanity. The link between Dionysus and wine was so strong that even private parties and celebrations were considered tributes to him. In fact, the spread of Dionysus's cult across the Greek colonies went hand in hand with the expansion of winemaking. In Israel, the production of excellent or abundant wine was viewed as a blessing from Yahweh. Passages like Amos 9:13-14 paint a picture of wine as a symbol of divine favor. The ultimate blessing from Yahweh was for every Israelite to sit peacefully under their own fig tree and vineyard, 2 Kings 18:31, Micah 4:4, Jeremiah 31:5. On the flip side, a shortage of wine was seen as a punishment from Yahweh, Amos 5:11, Zephaniah 1:13, Joel 1:5. These beliefs explain why Yahweh was invoked during the grape harvest, Hosea 7:14. Wine also played a significant role in Yahweh's worship in the sanctuary, as seen in the offerings described in Exodus 29:40, Leviticus 23:13, and Numbers 15:5-10. Altogether, the Israelites themselves were often symbolized as Yahweh's vineyard, Isaiah 5:7, Jeremiah 6:9, 12:10. You can see the image of ancient Israelite wine jars, and there's an artist recreation of earliest wine presses in Tel El Barak, Lebanon. There's the real site of Tel El Barak, Lebanon, which is in the northern region of Israel. Here is a map of the region near Tyre. It's a little south of where Tyre is, but it's in the north part where Samaria and Israel are close to. Yahweh's association with wine might not seem particularly noteworthy if we view him solely as the master of the universe, controlling all forms of transformation. But the Bible's depiction of Yahweh and wine suggests a much stronger connection than one might expect from a strictly monotheistic perspective. For instance, it seems that some aspects of Yahweh's popular worship were tied to the heavy consumption of wine. Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, were apparently quite drunk during the consecration of Yahweh's tabernacle in Leviticus 10:1-10. Interestingly, before their tragic demise, no one, not even Moses, saw their intoxication as an issue for carrying out their sacred duties. Another religious ceremony involving the liberal consumption of wine, called the Marzeah, is also mentioned in the Bible. This practice wasn't condemned by prophets like Amos and Jeremiah, except when it led to excesses. This suggests that Marzeah was indeed linked to Yahweh's worship. Considering all this, it seems the similarities between Israelite festivities and Dionysian banquets, as Plutarch observed, aren't just the result of Greek influence. Rather, the Dionysian banquet closely mirrors an ancient Canaanite tradition that was deeply intertwined with the popular cult of Yahweh. Snakes play a significant role in the imagery surrounding both Dionysus and Yahweh, hinting at a deeper connection between these two deities. Dionysus is famously associated with snakes. The god is said to have been born in a nest of serpents, and as a child, he's often depicted holding snakes. As he grows, Dionysus even becomes symbolized as a mythical snake himself. The handling of snakes was a key element in the cult of Dionysus, especially among the Maenads, his frenzied followers. His Thracian counterpart, Sabazius, was also symbolized as a snake, with the reptile playing a central role in his worship. Check out the amazing cluster of grape Dionysus on Mount Vesuvius. He's surrounded by a snake in 62 to 79 AD. And also for those who lost their minds during the Olympics, here you go with the purple guy. You can also see a Maenad carrying a thyrsus and a leopard with a snake rolled up over her head. This art is 490 to 480 BC. Look carefully at the snake on her forehead. Yahweh, on the other hand, is described by Isaiah as being surrounded by burning snakes, or seraphim, Isaiah 6, 1-3. And flying serpents are sent by Yahweh to attack Israel's enemies, Isaiah 14:29. In a monotheistic context, these serpentine associations might seem insignificant. After all, Yahweh is said to reign over the entire universe. But there's more to this story. The transformation of Moses' staff into a snake, Exodus 4, 1-5, was seen as a clear sign that he was speaking on Yahweh's behalf, suggesting that Yahweh had a closer connection to snakes than traditional monotheistic interpretations might suggest. This idea is further supported by the fact that Yahweh was worshipped in Jerusalem in the form of a bronze snake, known as Nehushtan, until Hezekiah's religious reforms put an end to this practice. In Greek tradition, milk and honey hold special significance in the worship of Dionysus. The Maenads, his wild followers, believed that when honey and milk flowed from their staffs, thyrsus, it was a divine sign, a theophany of Dionysus himself. This miraculous exudation was even seen as the god's way of urging the Maenads to abandon their daily domestic tasks and dedicate themselves entirely to his worship. Similarly, milk and honey are deeply connected to the God of Israel, Yahweh. The Bible frequently describes Canaan as a land flowing with milk and honey, highlighting this as a defining feature of Yahweh's dominion. Moreover, milk and honey are the foods specially set aside for those devoted to Yahweh, particularly during their initiation rites, marking them as symbols of divine favor and spiritual nourishment. The perpetual flame holds a place of deep significance in both the worship of Dionysus and Yahweh. In Thebes, a flame burned eternally in the temple of Dionysus, symbolizing the god's enduring presence and power. This flame was more than just a physical fire. It was a vital emblem of Dionysus himself. Similarly, in the worship of Yahweh, a perpetual flame, Esh Tamid, was central. This flame had to be ignited immediately upon the completion of the tabernacle, even before its official inauguration, and it was meant to burn forever, as commanded in Exodus 27:20-21.
It shall be a statute forever throughout their generations on behalf of the children of Israel.
The everlasting nature of this flame underscores its crucial role in the worship of the Israelite deity, symbolizing Yahweh's eternal presence and unending covenant with his people. In Greece, choral singing was so closely tied to the worship of Dionysus that the entire practice was known as the Dionysia. During the performance of a dithyrambos, a mix of choral singing and dancing, the choir master, Chorigos, was seen as either a prophet of Dionysus or even his living embodiment. In the mystery cults of Dionysus, where the god's original essence was more faithfully preserved than in popular worship, participating in a choir singing for the deity was considered the first step toward truly knowing him. Reminds me of Christian worshippers today. This suggests that the choral performance wasn't just a decorative part of Dionysian worship, it was at the very heart of it. Similarly, in Israel, the worship of Yahweh was deeply intertwined with choral singing. This is most evident in the Psalms, where the psalmist composed and performed choral songs in the Jerusalem temple. The central role of choral singing is also highlighted during the ceremony of bringing the Holy Ark to Jerusalem, 2 Samuel 6:5, 1 Chronicles 15:27, and after its placement in the city of David, 1 Chronicles 16:4-7. The importance of choral performance in Yahweh's worship is further emphasized by its prevalence in all ceremonies, including sacrifices, and by the sheer number of singers and musicians involved. 288 performers and poets, according to 1 Chronicles 25:7. These singers were organized into groups of 12, mishmarat, continuously rotating so that the choral singing never ceased, 1 Chronicles 25. Clearly, choral singing wasn't just an embellishment in Yahweh's worship, it was a fundamental component. All these parallels between the worship of Dionysus and Yahweh are fascinating, but they don't necessarily prove a direct connection between the two deities. After all, in Greece, wine is also associated with the god Apollo, and snakes appear in various non-Dionysian contexts, like with Python and Typhon. More broadly, the perpetual flame is a general symbol of holiness, and choral singing is a form of collective praise, so widespread that it alone cannot serve as definitive evidence. To establish a true link between Yahweh and Dionysus, we would need to identify more specific, unique characteristics that they share. In the first book of Kings, we find a fascinating account of Yahweh revealing himself to Elijah, not as a powerful wind, nor an earthquake, nor fire, but as the fine voice of silence. This revelation came after a long period of preparation for Elijah, lasting 40 days, which suggests that this ethereal, almost intangible nature symbolized by the fine voice of silence reflects the true essence of Yahweh, something likely overlooked in the more popular forms of worship. Dionysus, too, is a god with an ethereal nature. His name Bromius, which means the rustling, evokes a gentle breeze or wind, much like the fine voice of silence that reveals Yahweh. In Euripides' Bacchae, this ethereal quality of Dionysus leads to a mysterious and elusive definition of the god when Pentheus asks,
Are you saying that you saw clearly what the god was like?
The response he receives is,
He was as he chose. I did not order this. Euripides Bacchae, 478.
Euripides emphasizes that this is not a flippant answer. It's a profound insight into the nature of the deity, strikingly similar to Yahweh's self-definition.
I am that which I am. Ehye Asher Ehye Exodus 3:14.
This ethereal nature might be seen as a general characteristic of holiness, and on its own, it might not serve as definitive proof of a direct connection between Yahweh and Dionysus. However, this shared quality does create unique similarities that set these two gods apart from all other Greek and Canaanite deities. In the book of Samuel, we find a striking example of Yahweh's unique mode of action.
You, Saul, shall meet a band of prophets coming down from the high place with a psaltery, a timbrel, a pipe, and a harp before them, and they will be prophesying. The Spirit of Yahweh will come mightily upon you, and you shall prophesy with them, and be turned into another man. 1 Samuel 10:5-6.
This passage suggests that the Spirit of Yahweh can induce uncontrollable behaviors, often sparked by music and dance, and seems to spread like a kind of epidemic. Similarly, in Greece, Dionysus is renowned for his ability to provoke enthusiasm, a state where the spirit of Dionysus enters a person, transforming them into a Bacchant. In this state, they are close to a trance, driven by the contagious power of music, choral performance, and dance. The mode of action of Dionysus is so similar to the one described in Samuel that some scholars, like Jean Mayer, have equated the Greek phrase to become a Bacchant, Baccheo, with the Hebrew term to become a prophet, Mithnahab. In both cases, this divine-induced, uncontrolled behavior can be dangerous. The tragedy in the Bacchae, where Pentheus is killed by his own mother and the Maenads during their trance, is a vivid example of Dionysus's vengeance following the collective madness of his worshippers. A similar theme appears in the book of Jeremiah, where collective madness stems from the wine worship of Yahweh.
Thus said Yahweh, Behold, I will fill all the inhabitants of this land, even the kings that sit upon David's throne, and the priests and the prophets, and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, with drunkenness, and I will dash them one against another, even the fathers and the sons together, affirmation of Yahweh. I will not pity, nor spare, nor have compassion, so as not to destroy them.
Dionysus is also known for driving soldiers to madness.
He also possesses a share of Ares' nature, for terror sometimes flutters an army under arms and in its ranks before it even touches a spear. And this too is a frenzy from Dionysus, Bacchae 302-305.
Yahweh too can provoke destructive chaos among armies.
And they stood every man in his place round about the camp, and all the host ran, and they shouted and fled. And they blew the 300 horns, and Yahweh set every man's sword against his fellow, even through all the camp. Judges 7:21-22.
These parallels highlight the distinctive mode of action shared by Yahweh and Dionysus. Both deities enter into individuals, altering their psyche and behavior. This process can lead to transcendence and prophecy for sincere worshippers, or to madness and destruction for others. This exceptional mode of action also sheds light on why both Dionysus and Yahweh are so closely associated with wine, the drink that alters behavior in ways that are unpredictable and uncontrollable. The unique way Dionysus and Yahweh operate doesn't just set them apart from other Aegean and Canaanite gods. It also raises similar questions about their divine nature and powers. In Israel, this is highlighted by David's declaration after defeating Goliath.
All the earth will know that there is a God in Israel. 1 Samuel 17:47.
It's unlikely that Goliath and the Philistines were unaware that Yahweh was Israel's official deity. So, what David might actually be addressing is a doubt about Yahweh's ability to protect the Israelites as a national god should. This interpretation is supported by the Philistines' test to see if their suffering after capturing the Ark of the Covenant was truly Yahweh's doing.
And see, if it goes up by the way of its own border to Beth Shemesh, then he, Yahweh, has done to us this great evil. But if not, then we shall know that his hand has not smitten us. It was just a coincidence. 1 Samuel 6:9. You are idle, therefore you say, let us go and sacrifice to Yahweh for 3 days. Exodus 5:17.
The Egyptians might have viewed the worship of Yahweh as a flimsy excuse to stop working, perhaps because Yahweh wasn't seen as a traditional god who required standard worship practices, or because his festivals, likely involving banquets, seemed more like secular gatherings to them. This doubt about Yahweh's power didn't disappear quickly, as seen in the book of Joel.
Spare your people, Yahweh, and do not let your heritage be disgraced, a byword among the nations. Why should they say among the peoples, where is their God? Joel 2:17.
But it wasn't just Israel's neighbors questioning Yahweh's power. The Israelites themselves had their doubts. Zephaniah speaks of those who say in their hearts,
Yahweh does no good, nor does he evil. Zephaniah 1:12.
Surprisingly, this skepticism wasn't limited to non-believers. In Genesis, Sarah laughed when Yahweh's messengers predicted the birth of Isaac, prompting Yahweh to ask Abraham,
Is anything too hard for Yahweh? Genesis 18:14.
Even Moses doubted Yahweh's ability to provide meat for the Israelites, leading to the same question.
Is Yahweh's hand shortened? Numbers 11:23.
A similar skepticism surrounds Dionysus. In Euripides' Bacchae, Pentheus outright rejects Dionysus' divinity and his cult. And just like in Israel, even Dionysus' followers sometimes doubted his power. Cadmos advises Pentheus,
Even if, as you say, he is not a god, call him one, and tell a glorious falsehood, so that Semele might seem to have borne a god, and honor might come to all our race. Euripides Bacchae 3:30-36.
Even the hero of Euripides' tragedy isn't entirely convinced that Dionysus has saved him from Pentheus. As in the Bible, the question of Dionysus' divinity becomes a central theme in the Homeric hymns and the Bacchae. In both traditions, the deity's power is ultimately demonstrated through harsh vengeance against those who deny their divine nature. One of the most striking characteristics of Yahweh is his demand to be the sole object of worship for everyone in Israel, coupled with the rejection of all other deities. Interestingly, Dionysus shares a similar demand. He required everyone in Greece to worship him, without exception. Moreover, this worship of Dionysus led to his recognition as the exclusive source of authority. This insistence on exclusivity had a profound and subversive impact on the social and political order maintained by the official pantheon in both cultures. In the Bible, Yahweh's subversive nature first emerges through his role in delivering Israel from Egyptian slavery, but it doesn't stop there. Later, when the Israelites ask for a king, it's seen as a rejection of Yahweh's authority, 1 Samuel 8:7. And any attempt by the king to impose his rule over Israel is interpreted as a sin against Yahweh. Dionysus exhibits a similar subversive streak from the early stages of his popular cult. His demand for universal worship directly challenged the social order of the Dark Age, earning him the title of the liberating god of Greece. Later, the public cult of Dionysus was promoted by the first tyrants as a way to dismantle the existing social and political structures dominated by the aristocracy. However, just like in Israel, this subversive power also posed a threat to the new political order established by the tyrants and their supporters. To counteract this, the authorities eventually tried to confine Dionysus's worship to private festivals and banquets, perhaps hoping to dilute his impressible, subversive nature with wine. In Rome, where political power wasn't as intertwined with religious authority, the Senate simply eradicated this subversive element by issuing an order in 139 BCE that banned the cult of Dionysus, also known as Liber, and authorized brutal repression against his followers. These parallels between Yahweh and Dionysus set them apart from all other Canaanite and Greek deities. However, a fundamental difference remains. While representations of Yahweh were strictly forbidden in Israel, Dionysus was commonly symbolized as a man. The origin of this difference is explored in the next section. Dionysus is a god of dual nature, embodying both ethereal and human qualities. As an ethereal god, Dionysus was symbolized in abstract ways, like the air moved by bellows, or a simple piece of wood encased in copper. Later Orphic hymns praised him as an omnipresent principle, an unseen force pervading everything. Yet Dionysus also had a more tangible side. He was considered a demigod, born from the union of Zeus and the mortal Semele. This human dimension made him indistinguishable from ordinary mortals when he chose to conceal his divine powers. We see this duality vividly in Euripides' Bacchae. The character of Dionysus in the play appears as a young man, and to Pentheus, he seems nothing more than a convincing charlatan, corrupting Thebes with foreign cults. Throughout the play, this Dionysus doesn't overtly behave like a god. He mentions that his hair is consecrated to the deity, implying he is merely a servant of Dionysus. He defends the god with the fervor of a devoted follower.
Bromius will not allow you, Pentheus, to remove the Bacchae from the joyful mountains.
He also speaks of Dionysus as an external divine force.
Then, Bromius, so it seems to me, I speak my opinion, created a phantom in the courtyard.
To Pentheus, he even suggests that the god is accompanying them on their journey. But here's where it gets interesting. The hero doesn't just invoke Dionysus, he fully identifies with him. He warns Pentheus.
But Dionysus, whom you, Pentheus, claim does not exist, will pursue you for these insults. For in injuring us, you put him in bonds.
He also aligns himself with the god's vengeance.
He will go to the Bacchae, where he will pay the penalty with his death. Dionysus, now it is your job, for you are not far off. Let us punish him.
There's an undeniable bond between the hero and the god, as hinted when he says,
The god himself will release me whenever I want.
This connection goes beyond mere devotion, or an encounter with the divine, face to face. The hero is endowed with divine powers, as revealed by a messenger who describes his extraordinary feat.
And then I saw the stranger perform a marvelous deed. For seizing hold of the lofty topmost branch of the pine tree, he pulled it down, pulled it to the dark earth. It was bent just as a bow or a curved wheel, when it is marked out by a compass, describes a circular course. In this way, the stranger drew the mountain bough with his hands and bent it to the earth, doing no mortal's deed.
These insights reveal that two distinct, yet closely related entities coexist under the name Dionysus. The first, ethereal in nature, can be understood as the ether god, revealed as a gentle breeze or a holy fire. The second, with a human appearance, is described in the prologue of the Bacchae as the god. This figure should be seen as the human theophany of the ether god, a mortal who, devoted to the ether god, is then invested with divine powers, acting in the god's name and spreading his cult. When searching for biblical parallel to the man-god dimension of Dionysus, we encounter the concept of
Ish Elohim.
This term is usually interpreted as referring to men like Moses, Samuel, Elijah, and Elisha, figures who speak or act in the name of Yahweh. The common translation, man of God, suggests they are faithful servants of the deity, 1 Samuel 2:27, 1 Kings 13:1. However, certain uses of Ish Elohim in the Bible hint at a more complex reality. An Ish Elohim is not merely a servant of Yahweh, but is a mortal invested with divine powers. This seems to be the defining characteristic of an Ish Elohim, as the woman exclaimed to Elijah after he brought her child back to life.
Now I know that you are an Ish Elohim, and that the word of Yahweh in your mouth is truth. 1 Kings 17:24.
Elijah himself expresses this power when he says to a captain of 50,
If I be an Ish Elohim, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. And sure enough, fire descended and consumed them all. 2 Kings 1:10.
What's particularly curious here is that Elijah doesn't invoke Yahweh before performing the miracle, nor does he offer thanks afterward. If Elijah were merely a servant of Yahweh, he would have needed to plead for divine intervention, but here, Elijah performs the miracles on his own. This phenomenon is also extensively observed in the actions of Elisha in 2 Kings 2-6. Perhaps the clearest illustration of the unique status of an Ish Elohim comes from Moses, who is granted divine status by Yahweh in relation to his brother Aaron.
He, Aaron, shall be to you, Moses, a mouth, and you shall be to him as God, Elohim. Exodus 4:16.
Later, Yahweh reiterates,
See, I have made you as God, Elohim, to Pharaoh, and Aaron your brother shall be your prophet. Exodus 7:1.
These statements should not be dismissed as mere metaphors. That an Ish Elohim is not just a devout man devoted to Yahweh, but is, in fact, a human theophany of Yahweh. Therefore, the term Ish Elohim should be understood not merely as man of God, but as man God. The parallels between the dual nature of Dionysus in Greece and the complex relationship between Yahweh and the Ish Elohim in Israel are striking. Both traditions reflect the unique mode of action of an ethereal god who bestows divine powers on humans and alters their psyche. In Greece, the god and his human theophanies share the same name, Dionysus, which allows for his representation both abstractly and as a young man. In Israel, however, the Ish Elohim is never called Yahweh and is not worshipped, which is why the worship of Yahweh remained aniconic from the beginning. This difference in representation should not be seen as essential, but rather as a cultural variation that actually strengthens the parallel between these two deities. All these comparisons between Dionysus and Yahweh, in terms of their essential nature, attributes, mode of action, and worship, lead to the conclusion that these deities are remarkably similar. However, without an explanation for the origin of this reality, it remains challenging to place these findings in a historical context. If Yahweh and Dionysus are indeed homologous deities, they must have originally presided over the same natural phenomenon. I've recently suggested that before Yahweh became the god of the Israelite alliance, he was the patron deity of Canaanite smelters. This original identity is hinted at by several factors. His association with serpents, a symbol of copper smelting, biblical metaphors depicting him as a smelter, his affinities with other gods of metallurgy, his origin from Seir, a region known for copper metallurgy, and his probable worship by Canaanite smelters like the Kenites and Edomites before his adoption by the Israelites. This earlier image of Yahweh helps us understand many of his distinctive features. Copper ore and the metal produced from it are so drastically different that, before the advent of modern chemistry, the smelting process was seen as an act of creation. In this context, smelters were viewed as possessing demiurgic powers, transformed into demigods through the favor of the god who patronized their craft. This is why the patron of smelters is such a unique deity. While classical gods govern natural processes, the patron of smelters grants them the power to create. The ethereal nature of such a god finds a simple explanation in metallurgy. The intense heat required for smelting copper, up to 1200 degrees Celsius, could only be achieved by boosting the combustion of charcoal with an air supply. Hence, the air moved by bellows, or by the smelter's own lungs was considered the demiurgic factor, the ethereal principle that could transform a mortal into a man-god. From a metallurgical perspective, this ethereal principle is truly capable of inducing theophanies among humans. Given that many of Yahweh's attributes related to copper smelting are also found in Dionysus, it wouldn't be surprising to discover that, before becoming a widely worshipped deity, Dionysus was the patron god of Aegean smelters. The identity of the god of metallurgy in Greece is somewhat obscure. However, during the Bronze Age, the patron of smelters was regarded as the master of the smith god, the one who taught the craft to the metalworkers. This hierarchy might help us identify him. In Greek mythology, it is said that Hephaestus, the smith god, learned his trade on the island of Naxos, which was also known as Dionysia, after its patron deity, Dionysus. Dionysus's role as master of Hephaestus is suggested in the first Homeric hymn, where Dionysus is praised for introducing Hephaestus to Olympus. This event was significant enough that, as Jean Mayer noted,
among all the scenes from the Dionysus legend, the one almost exclusively represented by the old school of ceramics is the god bringing his half-brother Hephaestus to Olympus.
This recurring theme highlights Dionysus's role as Hephaestus's master, bestowing the demiurgic powers that allowed the smith to be accepted among the gods. In Greek mythology, Ariadne and Aphrodite are the respective wives of Dionysus and Hephaestus, but Ariadne is essentially the Cretan counterpart of Aphrodite, further confirming the parallel between Dionysus and Hephaestus. Beyond these preliminary observations, several pieces of evidence support the idea that Dionysus originally functioned as the god of metallurgy.
1. Dionysus was symbolized by a leather sack full of air, a bellows, leading to the name of his cave, Korikion Anthron, which means the cave of the leather sack. This suggests that the name Bromius, associated with Dionysus, refers to the movement of air that stimulates the creation of metal in a furnace. 2. Dionysus was called Perigenes or Perisporos, terms meaning born, conceived from fire. He was believed to have been born in a nest of serpents, animals that traditionally symbolized copper smelting in the ancient Near East, including Greece. 3. Dionysus was eventually assimilated with the great god of Crete. Like Dionysus in Greece, this Cretan Zeus was worshipped as a giant snake. His mythology, particularly his connection to the Kurets, a group of metal workers, and one of his names, Welkanos, related to Vulcan, the Roman god of smelters, suggest that this Cretan Zeus was deeply involved in copper metallurgy. 4. In Thebes, Dionysus was specially revered by the Technetai, a guild of artisans. Votive vases from Kabirion near Thebes depict Dionysus, initiating the Kabiroi, originally a group of smelters. In some depictions, he is even shown as the father of the Kabiroi, reinforcing his status as their patron god. 5. The Dionysian procession was primarily composed of Silenes, satyrs, and Corybantes. In Greek mythology, these figures are considered the sons of Hephaestus, occasionally working in his workshop on Lemnos. Their characteristic limp is typically associated with initiation into metallurgy.
Taken together, These elements suggest that Dionysus was originally the Aegean god of copper metallurgy. As with Yahweh, this identity may have become vestigial during the Iron Age, but enough evidence remains to conclude that these two deities share the same initial nature, making them true homologues. The remaining question is whether this homology arises from parallel but independent evolutions from a shared reality, the smelting of copper ore, or from the diffusion of a single deity across different regions. If it's the latter, the popularization of the cults in Canaan and Greece opens up various possibilities. Dionysus and Yahweh might have independent origins as gods of metallurgy, followed by a common evolution during the early Iron Age, or they might share a common origin with independent paths to popularization. The strong similarities between them suggest yet another possibility. Dionysus and Yahweh share both a common origin and a common evolutionary path toward the popularization of their cults. These possibilities are explored in the next section. In antiquity, copper metallurgy was anything but simple. It was a highly complex craft that required expertise across various fields: geology, mineralogy, mining, and geography, all backed by a vast network of relationships and alliances. The actual smelting, purification, and production of specific alloys demanded deep knowledge of pyrotechnology and protochemistry, skills honed over generations. Given this complexity, the spread of furnace metallurgy wasn't just about sharing technological know-how. It was driven by the migration of smelters who brought with them not only their skills, but also their entire way of life, including the worship of their metallurgical deity. This is why, in regions as close as the Aegean and the Levant, similarities between the gods of metallurgy likely point to a common origin. Dionysus, with his deep associations with metallurgy, may very well trace his roots back to the Canaanite god worshipped by those ancient smelters. The origins of Dionysus are intriguingly explored in the Homeric hymns, particularly in hymns 1 and 7, both dedicated to this enigmatic deity. In hymn 7, Dionysus is depicted as a young man captured by pirates. Hoping for a ransom, these pirates scour the eastern Mediterranean, searching for his parents or friends. This suggests that even the pirates believed this man-god hailed from the Levant. This interpretation is explicitly confirmed in the first Homeric hymn devoted to Dionysus.
For some say at Dracanum, and some on windy Icarus, and some in Naxos, O heaven-born Insorn, and others by the deep-eddying river Alpheus that pregnant Semele bore you to Zeus the thunder-lover. And others yet, Lord, say you were born in Thebes, but all these lie. The father of men and gods gave you birth remote from men, and secretly from white-armed Hera. There is a certain Nysa, a mountain most high and richly grown with woods, far off in Phoenicia, near the streams of Aegyptus.
This passage suggests that Dionysus originated in the southern part of Canaan, possibly in regions like the Negev, Arabah, or Sinai. In this arid landscape, the only area once covered by evergreen forests until the early 20th century was the mountains of Seir, Edom. This identification seems further supported by the first verses of the 7th Homeric hymn.
I will tell of Dionysus, the son of glorious Semele, how he appeared on a jutting headland by the shore of the fruitless sea, seeming like a stripling in the first flush of manhood. His rich, dark hair was waving about him, and on his strong shoulders he wore a purple robe.
The phrase fruitless sea, halos atrugetoio, literally meaning the sea where nothing may be fished, is a well-known description from Egypt to Phoenicia for the Dead Sea. Therefore, the jutting headlong, parathin, where Dionysus first appeared, might poetically refer to the copper mining area south of the Dead Sea, or the Sierra Mountains surrounding it. Modern scholars have often dismissed these claims about Dionysus's origins, but recent findings align perfectly with this ancient material. The region of Sierra is traditionally considered the birthplace of Yahweh, Judges 5:4, and the historical homeland of furnace metallurgy. Furnace metallurgy was introduced to the Aegean at the end of the 4th millennium BCE, making it seem unlikely at first that Iron Age mythology would preserve memories from nearly 2,000 years earlier. However, the metallurgical influence of Canaan on the Mediterranean was consistently reinforced throughout the Bronze Age via mining networks, trade of ingots, and the spread of metallurgical innovations like sulfide ore, smelting, and bronze alloying. This constant connection could explain how the Canaanite origin of the Aegean god of metallurgy, Dionysus, was transmitted into the early Iron Age. If Dionysus, in his original form, is indeed the Aegean counterpart of Yahweh, we must ask whether the rise of their popular cults was interconnected. Aegean influence in Canaan. Jeremiah 47:4 tells us that many Philistines hailed from Crete. Their migration to Canaan during the early Iron Age might have brought the Cretan worship practices of volcanoes with them. This potential influence of Philistine culture on the spread of Yahweh's worship should not be dismissed, especially considering the close ties between the Philistines and the Israelite tribe of Dan. This possibility is further supported by a striking parallel mentioned by Amos, who compares the Israelites' exodus from Egypt to the Philistines' migration from Crete, both events attributed to Yahweh.
Have not I, Yahweh, brought up Israel out of the land of Egypt, and the Philistines from Caphtor, and Aram from Kir? Amos 9:7.
While the influence of the Philistines may have played a role, it's important to note that they did not recognize Yahweh as their national deity. This suggests that the popularization of Yahweh's cult in Canaan likely did not originate with the Philistines, despite possible cultural exchanges. Another connection is the Dainoi, mentioned 138 times in Homer's Iliad, were the Greek warriors who fought in the Trojan War. They likely trace their origins to Dionysus, a legendary king of Argos, whose descendants were called the Dainans or Dainoi. This makes them one of the oldest, most prestigious lineages among the Greeks. The Dainoi included the greatest Greek heroes, Achilles, Agamemnon, Odysseus, Menelaus, and Diomedes, whose bravery and tragic fates defined their legacy in the war. Interestingly, the Dainoi might reflect real Bronze Age warriors. Some scholars connect them to the Sea Peoples, a group of tribes that ravaged the ancient world during this time. One of these tribes, the Danuna, also called Denyen, Dainoi, Danaeus, and other variations in Egyptian, Hittite, and classical sources, first appeared in the mid-14th century BCE in the Amarna letters. Some believe that the Danoi are linked to the tribe of Dan, the Danites, that are mentioned in the Bible, suggesting a deep connection between the Greek Aegean world, where the god Dionysus was worshipped, and the Canaanite region where Yahweh later became prominent. This powerful connection between Greek and Canaanite cultures reveals how closely intertwined these ancient civilizations may have been. Canaanite influence in the Aegean. In Greece, the earliest evidence of a popular cult of Dionysus dates back to the 9th and 8th centuries BCE, a period marked by dramatic transformations across the Aegean, a phenomenon known as the Orientalizing Revolution due to its Levantine roots. Several factors suggest that the spread of Dionysus's worship was deeply intertwined with this wave of cultural influence from the Levant. For the Greeks, Dionysus was believed to be the grandson of Cadmus, whose name derives from the Hebrew Kedem, meaning the East, or the Levant. Cadmus, the legendary founder of Thebes, was seen as the link between Greece and the East. This Levantine origin of Dionysus was clearly significant to the Greeks, as they often referred to the god as the Cadmean. An ancient inscription for Magnesia reinforces this connection, revealing that the local population requested priests and maenads from the lineage of Ino, the Cadmean, to guide the practices at their new temple of Dionysus, ensuring that his cult was performed authentically and in line with its true traditions. Further evidence of this Canaanite influence on the popular cult of Dionysus can be seen in the ritual cry Eleu, chanted during Dionysian processions. This expression, which lacks a clear meaning in Greek, bears a striking resemblance to the Hebrew phrase Alleluia. This similarity bolsters the theory that the popular cult of Dionysus was introduced to Greece from the Levant. During the first half of the first millennium BCE, the primary bridge between the Levant and the Aegean world was the Phoenicians. In Greek tradition, Cadmus, the grandfather of Dionysus, and the legendary founder of Thebes, is believed to have originated from Tyre. However, the Phoenicians are not known for promoting the worship of Yahweh, a practice unique to the Israelite alliance. It's unlikely that the Tyrians would have introduced the cult of Yahweh to Greece before promoting their own patron god, Melkart. In fact, the Greek equivalent of Melkart is easily identified. It's Melkertes, the god of Corinth. Melkertes' widespread popularity in the Corinthian isthmus underscores the strong Tyrian influence in Greece, at least from the time of the Orientalizing Revolution. While Dionysus and Melkertes share many similarities in Greece, they remain distinct entities, much like Yahweh and Melkart did in Canaan, despite their affinities. This parallel suggests that the spread of the Dionysian cult from Thebes may indicate a strong Israelite influence in Boeotia during the 8th and 7th centuries BCE. This conclusion is somewhat surprising, given that the Israelites' maritime activities are rarely mentioned in the Bible and are virtually ignored by Greek sources. As a result, an Israelite cultural influence overseas is generally considered improbable. However, this potential Yahwistic influence in Greece becomes clearer when we consider the territory of the Israelite tribe of Asher, described as a people who
dwell at the shore of the sea and abide by its bays. Judgender 5:17.
According to the book of Joshua, the northern boundary of Asher's domain extended to the southern region of Sidon, encompassing the coastal strip and all the towns and villages surrounding the fortress of Tyre. Joshua 19:25-29. A similar northern extension is mentioned in 2 Samuel 24:6-7, aligning with the geographical location of Asher's settlements. By the 9th century, this region was identified as part of the kingdom of Tyre. It's possible that the northern tribe of Asher had been integrated into the Tyrian kingdom by the beginning of the first millennium BCE. Supporting this idea is a passage in the Book of Kings, where it's reported that Solomon sold the land of Kabul to Hiram, 1 Kings 9:10-14. The archaeological and literary evidence strongly suggests that the land of Kabul might actually refer to the entire domain of the tribe of Asher. This transfer of authority from Israel to Phoenicia, occurring during the Orientalizing Revolution, might help explain the origins of the popular cult of Dionysus in Greece. The involvement of the tribe of Asher in spreading the Yahwistic cult overseas is particularly intriguing, especially considering the tribe's composition. Most of the Asherite lineages mentioned in the Book of Chronicles, 1 Chronicles 7:30-40, trace their roots to Heber, also known as a Canaanite clan. This suggests that the tribe of Asher included a significant Canaanite component. As the Canaanite copper smelters, the Kenites were intimately familiar with Yahweh and his ancient worship practices. Therefore, the cult of Yahweh within the northern tribe of Asher, as reflected in the cult of Dionysus in Greece, shouldn't be seen as a diluted, peripheral version of Yahweh's worship as practiced by the tribes of Judah, Ephraim, and Manasseh. Rather, it likely represents a reliable continuation of early Yahwistic worship, possibly even predating Israelite religion as we know it. Furthermore, recognizing an Asherite influence within the Phoenicians opens up another possibility. The islands mentioned in connection with Yahweh's worship might not only refer to the Aegean, but also to the Phoenician colonies scattered throughout the Mediterranean. This could explain the ambiguity surrounding the location of these islands in the book of Isaiah, potentially including both regions. This investigation reveals that the references in the Psalms and the book of Isaiah to the worship of Yahweh overseas are not merely the aspirations of monotheistic authors eager to extend the dominion of the Jerusalem-based God. Instead, they genuinely reflect the existence of a local worship of Yahweh in the Aegean under the name Dionysus. The parallels between these two gods have been established through the comparative analysis of their cults, attributes, modes of action, and human theophanies. The homology between Yahweh and Dionysus is further confirmed by their shared, though vestigial, connection to copper metallurgy. Given the extensive Canaanite metallurgical influence in the Aegean and the homology between Dionysus and the Cretan Zeus of the Minoan period, it can be concluded that Dionysus was the Aegean counterpart of Yahweh, even before their cults were popularized during the Iron Age. The Canaanite origin of Dionysus challenges current views of the ancient Aegean culture and civilization. However, this analysis also opens up new avenues for investigating ancient Israel. For the first time, a detailed, non-biblical source concerning the ancient cult of Yahweh has been identified. Although both the cult of Dionysus in Greece and the cult of Yahweh in Israel evolved independently throughout the first millennium BCE, the similarities between them offer valuable insights. A simple reference to Dionysus is not sufficient to fully clarify the nature of Yahweh's popular cult before the monotheistic reform. Still, the continuous spread of furnace metallurgy from Canaan was not confined to the Aegean, suggesting that homologies between Yahweh and other gods linked to copper metallurgy likely exist. Exploring these common cultic elements may help uncover the true nature of the early worship of this mysterious Canaanite god of metallurgy. Even at this early stage of investigation, the comparative study between Dionysus and Yahweh sheds light on many aspects obscured by the monotheistic reform. It is notable that the fundamental characteristics of Yahweh emerging from this analysis are closely tied to his original identity as a god of copper metallurgy. This exploration invites us to rethink our understanding of the popular cult of Yahweh in early Israel and the emergence of monotheism. This unique faith should not be viewed as the final phase of a natural evolution from polytheism to henotheism, nor as the culmination of a latent monotheism or monolatry inherent in Semitic beliefs. Nor is it merely the religious counterpart of a literary fiction composed in the second half of the first millennium BCE through a brilliant compilation of diverse sources. Instead, monotheistic faith and its biblical foundations appear to be the ultimate evolution of the popularization of the cult of the god of furnace metallurgy in his historical homeland. This topic is fascinating and should inspire more research for these connections. We will now look for Yahweh as a metallurgy deity, continuing the work by Dr. Nissim Amzalog. Ladies and gentlemen, here's what we've learned so far on this wild wilderness adventure. From the region of Israel at the east side of the Mediterranean, traveling south into the region of Edom, Midian, where the copper mines burned with the majestic heat of the sun, crafting not only elements by melting metals, but making men into gods, becoming man-gods, such as our prophets Moses, Elijah, Elisha, and Samuel. We wandered through the dry mountain regions of the Sinai, going into Egypt, where the oldest mention of Yahweh is chiseled in stone, describing him as a god of the nomadic tribes in that copper mining region, not the God of Israel. So how did he ascend to power in Israel and later merge with El, a completely different god? We learned that there was so much cross-cultural communication between the ancient world and the Aegean, the lands of Phoenicia, Israel, where the Philistines were located during and after the Bronze Age collapse, aka end of the world, 1177 BCE experience. We learned that so many of the tribes of Israel may actually originate from the Aegean and other locations in the Mediterranean Sea. We donned the cap of Sir James George Fraser and witnessed that Krishna and the ancient Cretan Zeus, known as Volcanos, may have likely connections all the way back when Linear B was the written language, which is currently undecipherable. We know that many other gods in the world were crafter, demiurge deities from Egypt, Mesopotamia, and all over the world. It's obvious to the experts that metallurgy was extremely significant in the ancient world, so it's time everyone knows what these scholars have discovered. We have no doubts that Yahweh, Zeus, and Dionysus have overlap in the Hellenistic period, but the shocker is discovering that there are roots that may go all the way back into the Bronze Age between these gods. In the next documentary, we continue carrying the torch of Nissim Amzalog and Paul Davidson, revealing the absolute best evidence from archaeology and the Bible that the God of the Bible, Yahweh, was a metallurgy god, likely from the Canaanite tribe. I ask that each and every one of you appreciates the hard work and dedication that I've put into this video and the many to come. If you truly appreciate this material, please consider helping us by joining the Myth Vision Patreon, YouTube membership program, a one-time donation in the description via PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, or buy one of our academic courses at mvp-courses.com. We really could use your help. Of course, you can like, comment, and subscribe, but honestly, the efforts that go into crafting these videos is very time-consuming and difficult. We can really use your help in continuing our efforts. You know, you can always rely on us to bring you the most cutting-edge scholarship and truth. Also, ideas in a very easy to understand way. So please stick around, family, and stay tuned.